Today I am giving you tips for job interviews when you're on the spectrum, so please stick around. Hi friends, my name is Claire and this is my channel, Whatcha Theory. Here, I make content about what it is like to live as an adult on the autism spectrum and whatever else feels good to me. So if that sounds good to you, or if you're feeling particularly gracious today, and I hope that you are, please go ahead and click the subscribe button, ring the bell. I almost forgot to mention that I put out videos 3 times a week. Click the like, click the like. But really, thank you for interacting with my videos. It really helps me, so thank you. Comment, like, etc. I was thinking about what we would talk about in our video today, and I started thinking about the fact that I have a wealth of knowledge concerning the topic of interviewing for jobs. You might not know this, but I was actually a professional recruiter for 4 years, and my role was identifying candidates for jobs and walking them through the interview process in hopes that companies would hire my candidates. So a big part of my job was training and coaching people through the interview process. I was thinking about this because many people who are on the autism spectrum really struggle with interviews. In fact, many people who are on the autism spectrum struggle to hold a job at all. So I thought it might be helpful for myself, a person who has autism, to walk through some tips, strategies that other people who are on the spectrum might find really helpful and help you get through job interviews, which are usually a landmine for people who are on the spectrum, something that we really struggle with. They mark the things that we are the worst at. Talking to new people, making eye contact, having to wear a certain costume to get the part, talking through your background, talking through things that aren't your special interests. I mean, I could go on and on. It's a nightmare. Interviews are a nightmare for people on the spectrum, and they cause so much anxiety. The first thing I did want to say is that there are some amazing companies, at least in the United States, that have recognized that people on the spectrum can really bring important talent to their companies, but that they don't interview well or they don't show the best side of themselves during interviews. So they have brought on, through their disability, equity, inclusion groups, different ways to apply to jobs where instead of doing a traditional interview, perhaps you're sent some questions to answer in type form, or they have you do exercises on the computer that show that you have the skills to do the job. So I just wanted to throw that out there, something to look into. There are companies, for example, I know Microsoft has a department that hires in that way. It could be really helpful to you if you listen to this and you're still thinking like, I still can't interview. I totally get it. These are just some tips, but companies have made a way for autistic people to interview in a different way, and I think that that should be celebrated, and I hope that you look into it. I made a list of a few suggestions that I have that I thought would particularly relate to people on the spectrum, but I just want to say I did this for a few years. I was pretty good at it, I believe, and pretty successful with it, and I could talk about it forever. If you have additional questions, I can do another video. So definitely in the comments, if you have other questions that I don't cover here, because there's no way for me to cover everything, I'd love to answer them in another video. So if you have other job-related, interview-related questions, go ahead and leave them down below. First bit of advice that I wanted to talk about is that every question should relate back to the job that you're interviewing for. I didn't know this when I was younger as an undiagnosed person. When I got questions like this, I would talk about things like my love for the arts, for singing, my enjoyment of animals, whatever my special interests were, I would talk about them. Little did I know that that's not what they were asking. And I wanted to share this because I sure didn't know that. I didn't know that what they were asking is, what are your special interests or strengths when it comes to doing this job? So instead of giving them an answer that has some more to do with your personality, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, depending on who you're talking to, but you really want to focus on the job at hand. So for an example, if you were interviewing for a clerical job and they said, you know, what are your special interests? You could let them know, or your strengths. You could let them know that you were really interested in keeping things organized and that you were great at organization. That ties in to the clerical part of the job and shows them that that is something that they can trust you with. Another strength could be responding to emails right away and keeping them organized, something like that. But you really want to always harken back to the job that you're there to interview for. You're not there to talk about your love of a certain TV show or, you know, your foray into ancient languages or anything like that. You're there to talk about the job at hand. They might ask you about your personal interest, and in that case, maybe you've put a line about your personal interest at the bottom of your resume, you know, running, swimming, jumping, whatever. You can just have a quick conversation about that, 1 to 2 sentences, but you're definitely not going to want to info dump about any of those things while you're in the interview. They're not asking you to info dump, and if you get completely off topic, it could show them that you're not able to focus on the task at hand when it comes to the actual job. Again, I'm just telling you these things because I did not know. I have made all of these mistakes. So, you know, do as I say, not as I did. Another tip I have, people would ask me a lot, and I know that this is something that people on the spectrum struggle with, is not knowing what they're gonna ask in the interview and not being good at responding immediately to a question. So my advice for this is to, number 1, read through the job description and be able to talk about each point on the job description. Not that they're going to ask you about every single thing on the job description, but it gives you a guideline as to what you might be asked about, if there's a specific software, etc. If you don't have a job description, you can go online and look up a job description from a similar company or a general job description so that you at least have a blueprint about what to study. It's completely fine to study before you go in and have a list of questions ready. If you feel like you're going to have trouble grabbing something from your mind right off the bat, it is totally fine to have things written out right in front of you. I've interviewed with a notebook in my hands in person and, you know, pretended or actually took notes. Interviewers really don't mind if you do that, and it usually keeps your hands busy, which helps me with my anxiety. Another thing is if you're doing an interview on the internet, which is like a godsend for people on the spectrum, you can have information all around you on the screen. You could have it in front of you on paper. Anything that you might need, any cliff notes, cheat sheets, that's completely fine to have. So yes, use the job description or a similar job description as a litmus for what you might be asked about. You can prepare answers, you can practice them. The only thing is, I know that as a person on the spectrum, sometimes if you practice something one way, you can get pretty rigid about it. So for example, if they ask you a question and it's different than what you studied, or it's just a little bit different, it can be hard to change lanes or adapt. I would try to have answers ready for a more general question and a more specific question. If you're asked a question that you think is too broad or too general and you don't know how to even come at it, my advice would always be to pick a specific thing that you want to talk about, a specific example, and talk about that example. So you could say, well, that's a wide topic, but for example, and then talk about that specific example. And then if you've gone too specific and they want you to kind of fall back a little bit, then they can tell you that. As far as dress code, before you set up the interview, it's totally fine to ask the person you're setting up the interview with what the dress code is for the interview. I would always go one notch above what they talk about for the office attire. That just seems to be what is most acceptable. Depending on the company, however, you might not want to go too overboard. So if you're in a Silicon Valley startup where everyone wears jeans and a t-shirt every day, you might want to wear dark wash jeans and a collared button-up or polo. That might be the nice thing to wear. But if you're, going to be in a law office or something professional, then of course you might want to go with the suit. But just remember to always dress very comfortably and not to go too over the top, too formal. You want to feel comfortable when you're talking to the person. You also don't want to only wear a suit one day when you don't have any other clothes that match that. You show up for your job wearing, t-shirts for the rest of the time. What about eye contact and handshakes? Lots of people on the spectrum struggle with eye contact. Lots of people on the spectrum struggle with touching people that they don't know. Do your best with the eye contact. This is another thing about, post-pandemic life, is that most interviews are done online. So you don't have to worry about touching people. You don't have to worry about necessarily eye contact because you can't really make eye contact in particular through a camera, and it's not as noticeable. But if it is in person, if somebody reaches out their hand to shake your hand and you're comfortable with it, go ahead and do that. But if they don't reach out, I don't think it's a requirement to shake hands, especially with how people are with germs these days. Eye contact, try your best. If it's something that you struggle with, try your best. The thing that's going to make it worse is if you are so focused on it that you can't even think. If you have to look down or look away, that's why I'm so, I'm a proponent of the notebook and the notes, or a resume folder with notes on it, because then you can make it look like you're reading your notes without having to worry about, oh, do they think I'm looking away because I don't care? Because I've gotten that comment in meetings before where it's like, why aren't you looking at me? Are you not paying attention? And it's like, no, I can't listen to you if I'm looking you right in the face. So I totally get it. Try your best. Try a notebook or look at your resume or something. That can be really helpful. Another thing that I think is super important is doing research on the company. If you do research on the company and the job, you will automatically put yourself ahead on any interviewer's list, because a lot of people go to a lot of interviews and they don't even care what company. They just care about the job. And I get it. As an ASD person, it's a job, right? Why do you want to work here? Because I need to work. Why do you want to work here? Because I need to make money. Okay, that is an honest answer. But find some other honest answers, because what hiring managers want to hear is, I read your company's philosophies on their website, and this one really resonated with me. I want to work at a company like that. I saw that your founder went to the same college that I did, so I know that the quality of the company will be good because we have that in common. Something. Looking up something about the company. Oh, I saw that you just went public. Just show them that you've done a little research, a little background effort, and that's going to put you far ahead of the competition that usually is like, what does your company do again? I'm just looking for a job. You should hire me because I'm nice. I don't know. All these reasons where it's like anyone could say that, but Not everyone does research on the company before they go into the interview. The final thing I'll say is it's really easy to get nervous about interviews. I know I do. Just remember that you are also interviewing the company. You are going to spend a majority of your time working for this job. And it is okay to ask questions and ask about company culture, ask about if they have disability services. It's all right to interview your interviewer about the job. Let them know that you're interested in the future with the company by having questions to ask them. Especially at the end of an interview, you will always get asked by the interviewer, almost always, do you have any questions for me? I don't care if you don't have any questions. Have something ready. It doesn't matter if it's, sure, can you tell me about the company culture? How long have you worked here? What do you like about working here? You can come up with different things to ask. Maybe you do have a question about the job, but come up with something. And you don't have to come up with it on the spot. Have a list of questions you might ask right in front of you on that notebook that you're holding, in your folder that you're holding. That is something that shows them that you're interested, that you're engaged. And I've heard from hiring managers time after time. I asked them if they had any questions at the end and they said no. And then they write that person off. So I don't know if it's a neurotypical thing, but even if you have no questions, make sure you're asking some questions at the end. And it's good for you too, because again, you're interviewing them. It's a life decision that you're gonna make, and they're going to be employing you. You're gonna be spending your time with them, so it's okay to ask questions. Well, that was kind of a long video. I definitely didn't get through all of my tips for interviewing. If you have any questions, go ahead and write them down below. I'd love to have a discussion in the comments. Have you struggled with interviews as a person on the spectrum? I'm gonna guess yes. I know I have. I hope that this has helped and that maybe you see some further success in your interviews moving forward. I hope that you have a great day, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!